with Tom Swarbrick.
Very good morning to you. Just gone 8 o'clock. Tom Swarbrick in for Nick Ferrari at breakfast here on LBC. Hope you find you very well this sunny Tuesday morning. Bad news, I'm afraid. It's now the train drivers that are going to go on strike. The FT reports the union has warned of massive disruption this summer. More strikes to come as the chaos at the airport continues and on the motorways as well. More on that in a moment. Plus, the school dinner's now off the menu. Beef, chicken and potatoes. Deemed apparently too expensive to serve to kids. We'll tell you why.
Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Nick Ferrari at breakfast with Tom Swarbrick on LBC.
Morning to you. Let's turn first to these petrol protests that bunged up at the motorways across the country yesterday. The police being told to go in hard on those protesters to stop them repeating that offence. Dominic Raab joins us. Deputy Prime Minister, Secretary of State for Justice and Conservative MP for Esher and Walton. Thank you for coming on the programme, Deputy Prime Minister. What do you think the police should be doing to stop these protesters? Morning.
Morning, Tom. Look, I feel for everyone who's feeling the pinch of the cost of living. That's why we've cut fuel duty by 5 pence to save the average car driver £100 a year. That's why this week we're cutting national insurance by £330 per year. But and of course, peaceful protest is part of the legacy, the pedigree, the history of this country, and it's absolutely right. I think the balance, I'm afraid, is not right though when those who take peaceful protest are effectively disrupting the ability for others to enjoy their freedoms, whether it's going to work, going to school, or getting to other vital services like the hospital or the NHS. So I do think that's the point at which protest, the boundary, if you like, for peaceful protest, when you start harming and disrupting the freedoms of others.
Very difficult, though, isn't it, for the police to work out how to stop those who are apparently just driving around in their cars. It's not like just the Just Stop Oil people who are dressed up in yellow and gluing themselves to things. Very difficult.
I think these are finely balanced calls, but I think the police are familiar with these and other types of protest where the attempt is to test the boundaries of the law.
And when it comes to what the police can do, you're obviously not going to give them operational advice, I would suggest, but you would say the law is there to help them deal with those protesters.
Yes, and to strike the right balance between peaceful and legitimate protest, which is part of our vibrant democracy, and action which spills out into effectively trying to disrupt and interfere with the freedoms of others, which of course is effectively coercive action, which is not just the legitimate exercise of your freedom to protest. That goes beyond what the law respects and requires.
Do you worry about freedom-style convoys that we saw in Canada happening in this country?
Look, we've got challenges this year with the cost of living. I think people want to know that we're doing everything we can as a team, government, our public services, members of the public, to try and get through this. And I don't think that kind of disruption to infrastructure, to roads, to people going about their business is right. I understand what lies beneath it. I understand the challenges. But I would just point to the fact that we've cut fuel duty
hasn't been passed
to
on,
5p.
Though, has it? Very frustratingly.
Well, and we've got an investigation that Bayes has commissioned into the speed with which wholesale prices are passed on to retail prices. That's right. There's a £37 billion package to support people with the cost of living. I'm the first to say we're doing everything we can to support those who are feeling the pinch. It can't be right, though, that as opposed to just exercising your right of peaceful protest, you then go about disrupting, intervening and preventing others going about their lawful daily business.
Let me ask you about something we've touched on earlier in the programme, the fact that there's a lot of food rotting in British fields at the moment because of a lack of workers. No change to visa rules to allow more to come in from the EU, it would seem. Would you consider, as the Justice Minister, using prisoners in the fields to come and pick that fruit?
Absolutely, and in fact we're already talking about it. There's a massive push to get offenders, either prisoners, those on licence, those leaving prison, into work. In fact, over the last year, we've increased the number of people in work within 6 months of release by 67%. I would say that where there are shortages, particularly in agriculture or other areas, this is a good opportunity. We vet those offenders to make sure they're suitable, but I do think that's one important avenue. And across the country, with our national rollout of the employment advisory boards, and I've got a great job James Timpson is doing, helping us to deliver that. We have a lot of local businesses coming and taking us up on that offer. And what we know, Tom, is when businesses do take us up on that offer, they find that those offenders, because they're vetted carefully, because they want to take a second chance to turn their lives around, actually make very good employees.
Okay. Well, we'll see if that comes out to help that with that particular problem. I've got to ask you about this, Mr. Raab, because I'm afraid it just still isn't clear about what you knew, about what the Prime Minister knew about the former Deputy Chief Whip, Chris Pincher. We were told no specific allegations were made aware to the Prime Minister, that nothing specific or serious. It turns out both he and you knew about allegations against the former Deputy Chief Whip. Why didn't Number 10 say that on Friday?
Well, I think their line that there were no specific and serious allegations reflects the fact that in relation to the complaint that was made in October 2019 that Chris Pincher had behaved inappropriately, that didn't trigger formal disciplinary action. It was, and when the complaint was made, I immediately asked and spoke to the Permanent Secretary at the Foreign Office to make sure he could look into this to see whether it warranted further action, including disciplinary action. He did look at it. It concluded independently from me, very important that these processes carried out without fear or favour, that there wasn't a case for disciplinary action. I, over and above that, referred it to the Cabinet Office Propriety and Ethics team because I wanted the assurance. So
inappropriate behaviour is not serious?
Well, of course, it depends on the circumstances and the facts. But what I'm saying to you is that
there was an investigation, wasn't there? Because Lord McDonald, the former Permanent Under-Secretary at the Foreign Office, has written this extraordinary letter, published it this morning, saying that you knew about the inappropriate behaviour. There was a formal complaint. Allegations were resolved only in the sense that the investigation was completed. Mr. Pincher was not exonerated. He says to characterise the allegations as unsubstantiated is therefore wrong.
No, so first of all, I'll tell you exactly factually what happened. I mean, I spoke to Simon McDonald. We agreed there should be a review of these complaints. It also ought to be said that the person raising the complaint did not want formal action, disciplinary action taken. The question was whether disciplinary action, in the way that in any organisation it would be understood, was warranted. The advice that came back to me was that it wasn't, but both the Permanent Secretary and I spoke to Chris Pincher to say that even though it fell below that level, it must never be repeated. I then asked the Cabinet Office Propriety and Ethics team to look at it again, to give me the assurance that a formal disciplinary process or something of that nature, including under the Ministerial Code, wasn't warranted. Right. They confirmed that, and that's where the matter was left. And
so
I
there was an
reported it to the Chief Whip.
There was an investigation in the Foreign Office about those allegations, yes or no?
So there was a review, an investigation, if you like, to see whether... Hold on, Tom. Very important. It's very important on such a sensitive matter to decide whether a formal disciplinary action or an investigation and process was warranted. The review conducted under the auspices of Sir Simon, now Lord MacDonald, was that that disciplinary action was not warranted. That doesn't mean that inappropriate behaviour didn't take place. We were clear that what happened was inappropriate, but we resolved it without going to a formal disciplinary process. And I spoke directly to Chris Pincher in no uncertain terms, and I referred it to the Cabinet Office to seek that assurance. And the reason, just to say, Tom, is it is very important in a situation like that where someone's had the courage to come forward that they've got trust and confidence in the system.
So it is not true to say that the Prime Minister was aware of no specific allegations, isn't it? The Prime Minister was aware of specific allegations in 2019, as detailed by yourself now, and this letter by Lord MacDonald. That's true.
Well, it's not clear to me precisely what the PM was made aware of, but what I can say is I don't think... in
the PM
relation
knew
to
that this investigation took place, the investigation that did not exonerate Mr Pincher, but that you said didn't lead to a formal review. That is true, isn't it?
I think the point that's been making, he wasn't aware of any action or any complaint that resulted in disciplinary action against Chris Pincher, and that was correct because the process had not resulted in that. And indeed, that was Sir Simon, now Lord MacDonald's, own advice to me, as indeed what came back from the Cabinet Office.
Can I play you this? This is because this has been days and days of trying to work out what the story actually is here, getting the story straight from Downing Street. And it's left your colleagues, ministers of the Crown, effectively having to distance themselves from Downing Street. This is your colleague Will Quint speaking to me yesterday.
I've been given a categorical assurance that the Prime Minister was not aware of any specific allegation or complaint. And I'll go further.
And you're happy with that assurance? You're happy to trust in that?
So, Tom, I am. I don't believe that anybody in that position, let alone the Prime Minister, if they are aware of what we are now aware of in the papers over the last 3 days, would have appointed Chris Pincher to the Deputy Chief Whip position if they'd have known about that.
What that minister was told by Downing Street, given a categorical undertaking that what he was being told was true, turns out wasn't true.
I don't think that's right, but these are fine distinctions. I think the point that was being making, that Will Quince was making, is that there was no specific or serious allegation. And the point I'm making that in relation to 2019, the complaint that was made was not something that triggered formal disciplinary action.
It was a specific complaint. It was a specific allegation.
Yeah, I've had on this morning round various versions of specific and serious, and I appreciate these are fine distinctions, but I don't think in relation. I think it's reasonable to say that this was not a complaint that had led to disciplinary action. Of course, let me just also say, because of the precise quote you gave me, that in relation to the most recent accounts, the Prime Minister has acted. Chris Pincher, has stepped down in his capacity as Deputy Chief Whip. There is an independent grievance process through the House of Commons process that is ongoing, and the Prime Minister has withdrawn the whip pending the outcome of that investigation. Again, with all of these things, from the action I took in 2019 to the most recent allegations, the critical thing is that we followed the processes which are designed to make sure people can have trust in them.
Do you think that this episode has increased trust in Downing Street amongst your colleagues?
Look, I think with all of these things, and it's easy to reflect with the benefit of hindsight, I think with all of these things, we take it very seriously when there's an allegation of in this case, in the most recent case, of actually very serious
but not
misconduct.
Just what the Prime Minister knew and when and how it's been relayed to the public via your colleagues, your cabinet colleagues and ministers. Do you think your colleagues can trust in what they're being told by Number 10 when they come out and do interviews like this and speak to the public?
Yes, I do. But of course, these are very sensitive matters, and we're also careful when you've got independent processes designed that people can have confidence in them to follow them very carefully. And even in relation to 2019, I want to be very careful because there's a confidentiality surrounding that, which I am duty bound under the processes to respect. So what I'm trying to do, Tom, is be as transparent with you and be critically crystal clear. I followed the letter of what was required and indeed went beyond it.
But you must then be livid about what Number 10 have been saying over the last few days, because you have known since Friday that what they've been saying isn't true because you did this process in 2019.
Well, the process in 2019 did not result in formal disciplinary action. Indeed, the advice that we had from the independent processes in the civil service, in the Foreign Office, but also in the Cabinet Office, was that it wasn't warranted. Whilst respecting both the process and the confidentiality, we're striving to give you as much transparency as possible. And of course, the most recent allegations are of a different order, and that is why the whip has been removed. That is why there's a grievance process underway, and we won't say anything more until we've had the outcome of that. And that is the proper way to go about things, Tom.
Thank you for your time. Dominic Raab, Deputy Prime Minister, Secretary of State for Justice, Conservative MP for Esher and Walton. Come to your thoughts in a few moments' time. You're listening to Tom Swarbrick and for Nick Ferrari at Breakfast on LBC. 8:17. News headlines. Simon Conway.
A former senior civil servant has accused Number 10 of lying about what Boris Johnson knew of allegations against MP Chris Pincher. A 22-year-old